right. Good evening and welcome to the Barbados Entrepreneurship Foundation webinar series from Ideas to Success. My name is Christian Paul and I will be your moderator for this evening. Joining me in tonight's conversation are three entrepreneurs in their own right, and I will introduce them very shortly. I want to thank everyone for taking time to join the conversation this afternoon. If you're joining us, in fact, you should be joining us two places, via Zoom and also via Facebook. And I would just like to say that this is intended to be an interactive session. And if you have any questions for us, you can post them in the chat on the Zoom link. At the bottom, there's a Q&A section. You just enter the questions in there and we pick them up. And also if you're following us on Facebook Live, if you just put your comments in your questions in the comment section, we'll also pick them up there as well. Thank you very much. We want to just say tonight that we're being sponsored by Gateway, who are our design sponsors for our flyers, and I will give them a little plug a little later in the conversation. The objective of the webinar is to provide an online forum for practical and hands-on discussion about the journey of entrepreneurship from ideas to success, which is the topic of the series. This is the second such sessions, and as I said, it's intended to be an interactive session. The BEF, who is the main sponsor for this event, the Barbados Entrepreneurship Foundation, has been in existence for the past 10 years, and many of you will be familiar with us from the $20 challenge. The series is closely aligned with the BEF's mandate to help support and create an entrepreneurship culture in Barbados. Again, thank you for joining. So I will introduce my guests for this evening. The first of them is Caroline C.C. Reed. And Caroline C.C. Reed is a broadcaster and marketing professional with over 10 years experience in radio and television. She has been able to translate that creativity into the digital marketing world. Thank you very much, Caroline, for joining.
Thank you.
Our next guest as well is Rachelle Mears. She's an entrepreneur and an award-winning multimedia specialist from the island of Barbados with over 15 years experience in media, video production, and entertainment. She's the founder and managing director of Mears Media Incorporated. She's worked with over 100 individuals, businesses, and organizations across the world, and of course in the Caribbean here in Barbados as well. And her clients range from multinational corporations, aid agencies, private commercial entities, and governments as well across the region. Rachelle, thank you very much for joining.
Thank you.
And last but by no means least, Shaheen Padmore, who is a trained dancer, former national swimmer, and former pageant queen. Proud Barbadian who's had the honor of representing Barbados regionally and internationally in her passions. She also holds an honors bachelor's degree from the University of the West Indies, Cave Hill campus in management with a concentration in entrepreneurship, and is currently the owner and creative director of Cultured by Shaheen. Welcome, ladies, to this afternoon's conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, as I said, my name is Christian Paul, and I'm one of the directors of the Barbados Entrepreneurship Foundation. I'm really happy and excited to lead this evening's conversation. And perhaps we'll start by just asking each of the panelists just to sort of give a brief introduction as to how they got to this point as an entrepreneur. Just very briefly as we wait for clients to join in.
Okay.
Who would you like to start with?
Let's go in alphabetical order. UCC, we'll start with you.
I had to start. Well, you know, I have worked in media for many years, and I have never really kind of wanted to be on the microphone or in front of the camera. Believe it or not, my passion really lied behind the scenes in terms of working on projects. But it just so happened that, you know, I ended up in front of the mic and in front of the camera. And over the course of establishing myself in media, I was able to translate that and create my own business in terms of online marketing strategies, and working with different clients from everywhere from event promotion management to restaurants to high-end luxury items, and being able to translate that message as well for some other entrepreneurs as well who are starting their businesses and need some creative advice and ideas in terms of bringing that to fruition. So that's a little bit about me, and I will let the lovely young ladies speak as well.
Okay, so it's me next. So again, hello everybody. I'm Rachelle Mears, and I started my media journey around 15 years ago. I actually did my associate degree in mass communications here in Barbados. And then for my bachelor's, funny enough, I did linguistics in Jamaica. But while I was in Jamaica, I took up continued the banner of media, working for an entertainment station in front and behind the camera, and then continued into the corporate world with advertising and marketing in Jamaica, then came back to Barbados and continued that journey and decided to go on my own. And I specialize in video production. So it's been a wild ride since then.
Thank you very much, Rachel. And last but no means least.
Hi, everyone. I'm Janae Padmore, and my experience, my journey started after university, believe it or not. And funny enough, I studied entrepreneurship, but I had no intentions of being an entrepreneur right after school. I actually had this idea, you know, I'll get into the corporate world and that I'll make those stepping stones and eventually branch out on my own, similar to Rachel, right? But then life had another way, and within about a year or so after graduating, I started my own business. I make jewelry. So I literally learned how to sew. And as you can see right here, this is one of my pieces. My mom taught me how to sew, and that was the first net piece made. I wore it out and I saw that there was a market for it. And that was the beginning of my jewelry business.
And here you are today.
Yep.
There you go. Thank you very much. I mentioned earlier that in fact, the entire series is co-sponsored by Gateway Designs, and I will just say a little bit about them. Gateway Design 4 is fixated on helping you communicate your brand convincingly to your market and the world. For us, design is not just a look, it's how you bring out your best. We specialize in focus areas: branding, design strategy, marketing services, and support on digital media, web, and social media. So before you start that new project or find yourself stuck in the rut trying to reach your market, give us a call at 238-9384. And we thank them for their very, very kind sponsorship. Good. So we're talking tonight about examining your idea. The first session that we had was on Thursday, and the first topic was stepping out as an entrepreneur. So we're taking this through a series of stages. And so tonight we're going to focus around examining your idea, because with entrepreneurship, it could be that the individual is stepping into entrepreneurship for the first time with an idea, or it could be an established entrepreneur who just has another idea. So the idea was that we would look at the whole aspect of, you know, examining your idea from various lenses. And I want to start off with this leading question here in terms of the market for your idea. In other words, so this entrepreneur is coming up with this idea. What is the market for the idea? Why are they coming up with this idea? Why this product, or why this service? And I will just throw this out to you, and we could just converse around that. So Caroline, I don't know if you want to start with that.
Okay, so I've always, funny enough, my wonderful stepson and some of his friends, they're in school right now, so they were tasked with coming up with ideas, and I love talking to young people, and they always have these ideas, and they you have to have a focus. So it's interesting that you said, is there a need in the market? So like Janae had mentioned, she wore a piece out and she realized the need, right? So you're either going to fulfill a need or you're going to create a need that you're going to fulfill. So in terms of the marketing idea, you have to start from that aspect. I'm a firm believer that you're either going to fulfill a need or you're going to say, hey, you know what? Here's a need that you didn't know you have, and I can fulfill that need, right? So you have to really identify and think about whether you're going to go into a competing space or you're going to create your own space. And each ideal comes with their own cons and challenges. And it's a matter of deciding, okay, how hard do you want to work? Are you going to then compete with the big giants? Or are you going to say, you know what, I'm going to be the best that I can be, but I don't mind being a niche product. So that is where you can look at being mass market or niche market. So that's kind of this original idea where you say, okay, well, before I even put my product out there, who am I talking to? Am I talking to everyone? Am I talking to females, males, young, old? Am I talking to only 100 people, but those 100 people are going to come back to me and be loyal to me? So you really have to think about that. So I'll pass it to the other ladies as well.
Thanks for
yes,
that.
I totally agree with Caroline. And to add to that, to even go even further, you know what your idea is you have to imagine your customer profile. So down to their age, where they socialize, who they socialize with, who they look at on Instagram, who they look at, who they aspire to achieve, to be like. You know, there's so many ways that you can build that customer profile. And I feel that's very important, because at the end of the day, you want to have a business with customers. You don't want to have just a product or just a service. You, at the end of the day, you have to succeed with customers. So the customer needs to be at the forefront of the person's mind, for sure, for the entrepreneur's mind, for sure. And, you know, you also have to look at the external forces as well. Like Caroline would have said, you know, do you want to mass market? Do you want to have a niche? Who are your competitors? Is it extremely competitive, or what can you twist? What can you add that can give a competitive advantage to your ID? Yeah.
Right.
That's perfect. And because I was going to give the example of, for me, when I was in Jamaica, myself and 3 other girls, we started a company called Scorpio 21. It was a music video company. So in Jamaica, it is all dance hall, reggae, music videos are being done every single day. There's a market for it. And there were lots of directors, but there were no real female directors doing anything, you know, doing something really, really significant at the time and doing things differently. So was there a need for us? Not necessarily, but we were different. And we approached the market that way. And that's what got us clients, because here's this all-female group. And then we came up with fresh new ideas. And that's where we kind of carved our way into that industry, which was already saturated as it was.
You just carved out a space. That's very interesting. Thanks for that. And the idea for this topic, I was having a conversation with a young lady who said to me that she was thinking about going into swimsuits. She'd started a bit before, and she just wanted to tap into a bit of my experience and just have a little session with her. So the first question I asked her was, well, what is your demographic? Who are you going after? And she said, well, anybody who wants to buy my swimsuits. And I said, but, you know, that's very, very wide. And for a small business person just starting out, how are you going to satisfy everybody? I think you should pick a spot and, you know, try to define what that spot is, and then go after that. So in distilling that conversation a bit more, I think she saw the benefit of rather than just jumping out there and starting to make swimsuits without trying to figure out all those things that we're going to be discussing this evening, it sort of brought her back to a starting point, because the starting point has to be before you actually go into any kind of production or any type of initiative. You need to be able to step back a bit and ask yourself some of these questions. And another one, for example, and we could discuss about it, is cost. Now, in terms of an entrepreneur, obviously there's products which you know have a defined cost, and there's services, and these have a cost as well. But that is important, because obviously, you know, what is the cost of you? Because you're not operating in a vacuum. There are other people in the market as well. So you're coming into the market. What is your price point, and why at that price point? And is it a sustainable price point? So let's have a conversation now about costs, and where does the idea of costs coming to an entrepreneur and being an entrepreneur with a new idea, or an existing entrepreneur just creating something new. And let me just throw it out to you, and we can go in the same order if that works for you all. Or we could flip it up a bit. Why did you start, Rachel?
Okay. So for me, I operate as, well, I have a product. So for me, when I first entered the market in Barbados, I was one of the few persons doing it at the time. I probably made it popular, if anything, not tooting my own horn at all.
That's all right.
But I found that I started experimenting at first. I knew my costs, obviously, but obviously in terms of pricing, I had to experiment. And again, know your customer helps with that. And they say in retail that your markup is supposed to be between 4 to 6 times the cost of goods. That's extremely hard to do in Barbados. And especially because, you know, most of our raw materials don't come from here. They're imported, sorry. And we have to figure out other costs necessary to add to the product and to make it what you want it to be. And you definitely have to consider that. And sometimes you may have to say, okay, maybe I can't do 6 times, but maybe I could do, say, 3.5, and then play with it as you go along. Yeah. As it relates to a startup, say for instance, because we're talking about new ideas. So say for instance, you have a new idea and you now have to study about capital, you have to study maintenance, you have to study branding because it's new. So obviously startup costs are going to be not extremely high, but they're going to be higher to start, obviously. Then it could start to wean off a little bit after you start. But all of those things have to be considered as well, because you want to create the brand, and a lot goes into brand awareness and marketing the product and making sure that the quality of the product is what you expect it to be, because all of that adds up to your business being successful at the end of the day.
Just a question, Zane. You said that when you came in, you probably made it more aware, the brand of jewelry that you were doing. So you probably had a bit of, I would say monopoly, but in the type of jewelry you were making, nobody was making that. So that gave you a little bit of an advantage, correct?
Yes.
From that perspective, because it was a bit unique at that time. At that time, okay,
yes,
good.
Yes.
There's advantages to being first, but also you can be easily copied sometimes, right? When you're first, so that's the other side of the coin. Rachel, what's your take on costs and pricing of your good or service? Where do you see that?
All right. For me, it might be a little different as a service, especially when starting out. You may not have all the capital to buy up a whole heap of cameras or audio equipment and have a studio and whatnot, but you also have suppliers. So you start to feed your way through with figuring out who is the best person to supply this particular need. You start comparing costs that way, and that affects your bottom line and your budgets towards your client. And also the thing is that even if you're starting up as an entrepreneur, it doesn't mean that you're starting up in that profession. So you could possibly be a veteran in marketing and you decide to start your own business. So this is where you have to look at, what is my worth? What do I know I'm going to offer the client? And I will never forget a very good friend of mine, Suan Tanis. She said, many times people ask, why are you so expensive? Not necessarily me, but I'm just saying in general.
You're talking generally.
In general,
Right.
Why are you so expensive versus why is this other person so cheap? So you now have to look at quality. And if you stand by what you're offering and you compare it within the market to other things, other people and other services, you say, okay, this is why I'm priced at this point compared to others. So competition is good. Looking at other people's costs is good, or looking at their costs, that's very good. But once you are true to understanding the value that you're offering to your client and to the industry and the market itself, then you work from there with your costing.
Okay, good. Thank you very much. Caroline, how about your take on that?
I'm so glad that they mentioned certain things. So there's different products. So there's a product and service. And when it comes to cost and when you're looking at your product or your service, because I've had experience in both. So there's CC, the product. There's CC, that's the MC. I am my product. You're not paying me for the hour on stage. You're paying me for the experience and the education that comes with that hour on stage. Right. So there is that. So I'm so glad that Rachel mentioned that, because it's an hour. Okay, well, get someone who will give you an hour. And not to say that to be, as Janae said, not tooting your own horn, but you have to then say and come at a standpoint where you believe in yourself and your product. So you have spent the years, you have spent the money development, you have had the experience, whether it's a service, you have paid your dues. And at the end of the day, it's a matter of saying, if you want this brand, it's going to be this much. And it's a little uncomfortable sometimes. And I find some people sometimes get a little uncomfortable with quoting their price for a product. But if you believe in what you have, the people that are going to see that value are going to pay that price. So there's that tactic, but then there's the other tactic where if you're mass product and you're going after everyone. So, ladies, we've all bought swimsuits. You have the $20 swimsuit. You also have the $200 swimsuit, right? So, the where you would wear and buy the $20 swimsuit is not the same as investing in a $200 swimsuit, right? So you really have to be aware of who, like Janae had mentioned before, who are you targeting? Who are you talking to? And that will also help play a part in your costs and your pricing. Because, you know, obviously we all know different coasts and different luxury malls and different malls and outlets, and it's going to, obviously the price is going to differ based on that. So I'm so glad that we're talking about product versus service as well, because, you know, you're not paying for the hour, you're paying for the 4 years of education, you're paying for the 10 years of experience. True. You're paying for the fact that if I lose my notes, I know what I'm doing. And you have, and you can close your eyes and trust that the job is going to be done. That's what you're paying for.
Yeah.
And in your case, with your example, Cece, they're paying for the fact that you have a following, and people will probably be encouraged to come to the event because you're the one hosting the event. So there's that as well, right?
Well, thank you. I don't know if I wield that much influence, but
well, no, you know, don't be bashful. I dabble a bit in a product, and that question about costs is so very important, especially if you if you enter in a market where there are other products that are similar, because on the one hand, you want to make sure that the price that you're offering your product or your service at allows you to recoup your investment into it, and then a little bit for your time and effort. But at the same time, you have to bear in mind that because you're the new entrant and there are other people that are already established, you have to tailor your price to suit, and I'm not saying you're trying to come in and just get market share, but you're tailoring it recognizing that there are other people in the market who are already established and their names or their brands are already there. So you are not going to be as known. So it's a balancing act that you have to strike to make sure you get it right.
I'll interject here and say, when I was starting out and came back to Barbados, even though I would have had certain level of experience, there are certain jobs that I either did for free or I did extremely inexpensive because I was trying to build a relationship.
Yes,
that is correct. It is very important as well.
Yes,
for sure.
As a new entrant in the market, that's so very important. And it's not that you're selling yourself short, but you're recognizing that because you're new to the market and you're not well known,
feel your way through.
You really couldn't command the same price as a new entrant.
There's a difference between and this is what, you know, because I've worked with and I'm sure Rachel can mention as well, because, you know, in the industry that we kind of work in media, you look for suppliers, as you had mentioned. So you can go with, you know, the really expensive supplier, or you can say to your, you know, your colleague or someone that you just happen to bump into who's doing photography, hey, you know what? This job is X, Y, and Z job. It's not paying a lot, but I really think that this can boost your profile and this can help you further in your goals. So you really have to look, there's a difference in taking up a salary right now, a big paycheck right now, versus forming a relationship, a lasting relationship. And when you establish yourself in that lasting relationship, word of mouth does the marketing for you too. So when you've established yourself with a client and you do good work, you know, you put in your dues and they say, you know what, I know I'm not paying you $1 million, but you produce work that's $1 million worth. I really want to work with you. And not only that, I'm going to recommend you to other people that I know are looking for this product or this service. So you really have to
see that. Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. It's interactive.
You see that word of mouth? Let me tell you, that phrase word of mouth is so important. So important, especially when your idea is new or you're now entering a market. It is so important, because I remember when I started, I never paid for social media ads. I never really did much advertising other than actually wearing my product and being the spokesperson for my product. And then it got out there. I mean, luckily for me, I had the dancing, so that gave me a little bit more exposure. But it's to find your market, and it's to find the networks to get to your market as well. So you don't have to be well known, but it is to find to network so that you get to your actual customers.
You raise a very interesting angle there, Janae, because people, and this works in smaller markets like ours, because in the Caribbean or in Barbados in the Caribbean, people know everybody. So you mentioned dancing. So because you're involved in dancing, people will know you from dancing. So if you get involved in another venture, that recognition can be transferred.
Of course.
And that's valuable. That's valuable,
Yeah,
right?
it is valuable.
Yeah.
I mean, you and your personal brand is very important as well. So Janae, the person, has dancer, entrepreneur, jewelry designer onto it, but it's still linked to one person.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yeah.
things are going to intersect. And that's very important. And utilize your resources. Utilize your resources. I mean, it doesn't make sense reinventing the wheel for each venture, because what's that gonna do? Make you work harder and not smarter.
Yeah.
So why reinvent the wheel?
I just want to say something quickly here too. Now that we're talking about relationships, is that sometimes those referrals come from past jobs. And why it's so important to not burn bridges when you go from being an employee to being an entrepreneur or employer, because a lot of those referrals that you get, somebody remembers your expertise and say, okay, well, she's not in the company now, but let's just hire her as a consultant, and that's your first client. You know, so you have to be very careful that when you decide to be an entrepreneur, you don't hold up your hand and say, man, I done working for the man, I done working for the woman, I on my own, man. But I think it's so important to
Yes.
maintain those relationships, and also very important as an entrepreneur. I firmly believe that it's great to be an employee before you become an entrepreneur, because you can learn from your employer's triumphs, mistakes, and challenges, and take that and apply it to your business, depending on what you go to do.
That's very interesting. I remember the topic, the last Thursday's session focused a lot about, and I don't want to go into it here in a lot of detail, but it's just that switch from employee to an entrepreneur. And should you continue to be an employee while developing your entrepreneurial exploits, or should you just jump off? And that was a very interesting, very interesting discussion. I just want to remind our listeners, or our viewers rather, on Facebook that we are open for questions. If you just put your questions into the comment section, we will take them. As well, those of you who are in here on the Zoom webinar, on the Zoom call, I should say, you could enter your questions in the Q&A section, and we'll also take them. You touched a bit on competition. I think it was you, Rachel. So probably I'll let you start out with that. And that is also very important. You know, in examining an idea, and we touched on it a bit, but we can delve into a bit more detail here. Competition, because as they say, there really are no new ideas under the sun.
Yeah.
So, you know, you come out with somebody has done it before. So are you, what it is that you're doing as it relates to competition? So let's just chat a bit about that. Karen, you want to start us off with that one?
You said that you're going to go to Rachel first.
Oh, I'll start. My thing is,
Okay.
I'll start.
Right.
You know, sometimes people going, I'm going to do this better than the other person. I'm going to do it. You don't necessarily have to do something better. You just have to do it differently, right? And do the best within your difference. And I think that is, and stay in your lane. Yes, it's good to know your competitors or your customers' alternative. You know, there's nothing wrong with knowing who they are, but at the same time, you know why you got into the business. And oftentimes, if it is just about the money, that's when competition is going to be in the back, is going to just in your head. But if you know your why and the direction that you're trying to go, then it makes things a little easier. And you just have to know that this is the way I have decided I want to do things. And this is why I've decided to do it this way. And this is why I think it's going to work and serve my client. And that's the approach, I think, a good mentality to have, or the one I try to adopt when looking at my industry, which again is very saturated here in Barbados and the Caribbean, well, all over the world. But I had to figure out what made me different and hold on to that and almost kind of put on some blinders, because if not, you'll get very intimidated and you lose sight of your purpose for why you do it and the love that you do it for. And that's the approach I take.
Yeah.
I agree with Rachel as well, because when the competitors come, you see these pages popping up and you're like, oh, okay, another one. I had to adopt that mentality as well, because I'm like, okay, I know exactly what I wanted. I know the aesthetic I want, and I know my creative strengths. And that is so important to know because that is your competitive advantage, your creative strength, your creative strength. So I definitely had to turn a blind eye. Somebody else does that for me, believe it or not. And I just like, you know what? It's important to know what they're doing. Yes, it is, but don't focus on what they're doing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
One of the things one of the, 10 commandments is be aware, don't be distracted. Be aware of what your competition is doing. Don't be distracted by what they're doing. Don't change what your product is or your service is simply to compete because you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. So there's a difference between being aware, being knowledgeable, and knowing who your competitors are, and being consumed and distracted by what they're doing. So yes, you got to be aware. You got to know who they're talking to, what they're doing. But once you maintain your focus, and then people would see that as well. So people will know consistency, loyalty, brand. Janae had mentioned brand recognition. So once you stay, like if I go and I buy a Cultured by Janae Peach, which I have, by the way, Janae, shout out Janae.
Yes.
So if I know what I'm getting, I may see the other stuff but I know service, product, I know that that's what I'm getting. And you know what, that's what I'm comfortable with. So be aware, don't be distracted.
Yeah, let your competition be your potential. That's what I go by.
Yeah, I guess it goes back to that starting point about who are you going after, and are you very clear in your mind who you're going after? Because yes, competitors can come and go after the same market that you have, and that's something that we, as an entrepreneur, you always have to be aware. It says the greatest form of flattery that people will duplicate your effort, but I suppose if you start out in terms of the market for your idea and you're working through who are you targeting, and you put a lot of thought into that aspect of it, then I think that's where it goes to your point about being aware but not being distracted. Yeah. And actually this dovetails nicely in another area I want us to look at is differentiation, which is exactly a lead on from the competition. I think you all were alluding to it in your contributions. How do you differentiate? What are some of the things that you need to bear in mind in terms of differentiating your idea or your product or your service, so that you have a competitive advantage? Because we spoke a lot about competitive advantage before. Yeah. Janae, you want to start us off with that one?
Well, I mean, for me, it's like I said, knowing your creative strengths, what your strengths are as an individual, or even what your resources strengths are actually, because it takes a team, it takes a village to actually create greatness. Believe it or not, I will call it greatness. Yes. But because that's what you're going to aim for, and no person does it alone. So it's about knowing your strengths and also knowing the strengths of those around you who can help you to get to the point of your business where you want it to be successful. So it really is utilizing all resources that you have, delving deep within yourself, figuring out, okay, I'm strong in this aspect. I'm going to milk this so that this works for my brand, for my product, for my service, and building your team around that core. I think that's very important.
I like that.
Karen, you want to take us on the other one? You want to jump in here and tell us a bit about the differentiation of the idea and how important you think that is in terms of your idea?
It is extremely important. There's CC the brand, right? And then obviously I do a lot of marketing consultancy for other clients. So one of the things I always say, the hairdresser always has the worst hair, and the nail tech always has the worst. Right? I don't focus as much on CC the brand, and it's good and bad because I know who I am, and at the end of the day, people who hire me for a job for whatever the case is know what they're getting. I have been fortunate enough that I've built long-term relationships, and this goes back to experience and being there and being consistent in terms of your message and who you are. In terms of clients now, you have to recognize what it is, and I think everyone has said this, what you offer. Are you being better? Are you being different? Are you solving a problem that maybe the other brand doesn't even know that they have? And you're jumping in to say, you know what, I've heard complaints about this product because it doesn't work. I could fix that product, and I could fix that issue and make it better. And now people are going to say, well, oh yeah, that was a problem. So you really have to be consistent, and you have to rely on your team, you know, and that in itself is a strength. Besides your product, besides your service, who you have around you, who you use, everything from your graphics, your branding, your models, your friends, your, you know, who's wearing your products, who's talking about you. That also plays a very big role in terms of being a competitive edge, giving yourself a competitive edge.
Ditto. The only thing I would really add to that is that sometimes being different is simply by listening to your client, because they may, like Cece just talked about, had an experience with somebody else, or they have their vision in mind. And I'm speaking from a video production service perspective, and they may have had work done a couple years ago, but they want something, they came to you now. So you have to hear exactly what they want, listen carefully, and then say, okay, this is the core of what I will offer, and here is how I can enhance that. And that in itself, working with your client, listening, having empathy, and trying to figure out how can I level up on this idea that your client may have given you or that you have, is what could be the difference.
Okay, interesting. That's I was hearing a common theme here about collaboration. It came up in some of the earlier subjects and the earlier topics and questions, but this idea of collaboration. There is a theory that Caribbean people do not like to collaborate, especially, and I'm using the term small business not in a derogatory way. I'm just saying people always say that in the small business sector, entrepreneurs do not like to collaborate. They always have an idea and they're very possessive about it, and we understand why, because you don't want somebody to take your idea, run with it, and then you're left, you know. So there's always a lot of caution around when do you share your idea and who do you share it with. In your experience, tell me about, you know, how collaboration works for you, and how have you approached it, recognizing the peril of it, but recognizing as well that there is strength in collaboration.
Oh, there definitely is. I mean, my biggest collaboration today, funny enough that you said that Caribbean people don't like to collaborate.
Yes.
My biggest collaboration was probably one with a Jamaican designer, believe it or not. She came here, she had a pop-up shop here. And then when I went to Jamaica, I had the pop-up shop with her. So that's how you build the relationships, and it's extremely important. Yes, you have to, and I would say building the collab comes with knowing your brand, knowing your business, and being confident in your business, because that's where the perils then happen. When you decide to go with any and everybody and they don't fit well with your brand, or they don't fit well with your business model, and it messes everything, all the possibilities and opportunities up. So it's definitely about knowing what your brand really is, what you've built, and business strategy, to be honest, business strategy.
Fantastic. Well, we have a question here, and the question is for CC. Does being in the public eye change the way you conduct business compared to if you were creating a product behind the scenes? And I think that's very relevant to Jane as well. So I'll ask you to also answer that question, maybe all three of you. But the question was really posed for CC, and it says, let me just go through it again. Does being in the public eye and on radio, for example, change the way you conduct business compared to if you were creating a product behind the scenes where nobody knew, you know, who's the face of the product, or who, you know, who's the creator?
Okay. Y'all are making me sweat now. Okay. Okay. No, honestly, it comes with the positive and the negatives. Okay. So there is, and it's really funny that I make the differentiation between Cece and Caroline. So, you know, Cece is on air, you know, she'll MC big stage show reggae festival. She'll, you know, be at dance halls and stuff like that. But at the same time, I'm also in boardrooms. So Caroline is in the boardrooms, right? So I think it is, and how you conduct yourself, and Janae, I'm sure can speak to this too, how you conduct yourself in every aspect of your life plays to every other aspect. So Cece doesn't get on stage and behave a certain way because she knows that come Monday morning, she's in a boardroom. And social media being what it is, there is that element of, wait, weren't you I just saw you So, I mean, you really
I feel attacked.
no. You can dance. I cannot. There's a difference. Trust me. There's a difference. I can't. No. There's a lot of things going on. So, but the thing is, at the end of the day, it does help. Honestly, there is an advantage once you have created, and I mean, everyone can speak to this. Every entrepreneur can speak to this. Every person can speak to this. Your reputation is gold. Who you are in the supermarket, on air, on television, on Zoom meetings, in the boardroom, on stage, who you are is who you are. I mean, yes, there may be different elements that you pull forward for stage, and I know Janae can say that. Like, I'm not, like, when I go on stage, it's completely different than, you know, Christian, you would know this, when you and I have coffee, it's completely different. You know, when I'm in school meetings, it's completely different, you know? But that's what you have to do. And it is, I mean, there is an advantage and a disadvantage, because some people may not like CC and may see CC as, well, what does she know? When you love CC, thank you.
Sure.
So there's the positive and the negatives, but at the end of the day, once you're in that room, whoever you are, whatever your reputation is, you have the opportunity to make or break your reputation in that room. So that's what I would say. You have a chance, like, just work with what you have, and if you have to work a little harder, maybe you have to work a little harder. But those who want to work with you, you'll find that those are the best people to work with.
Yeah, and it's about knowing your strengths. Like I keep going back to knowing your strengths and knowing who you are as a person and your personal brand, for sure. For me, I remember when I was coming up with a name for my brand, I did not want my name in the brand, believe it or not. I did not want it. And it was for that reason. I wanted to test myself to see, okay, can this survive on its own without, you know, a face, you know, whatever. But it just so happened, and clearly God had a better plan. It just so happened that I couldn't have the brand without the name, because my name was unique, and Cultured is actually a quite common name. So, I mean, changing my mindset only from the business name, I was like, okay, well, I could as well milk it. And going back, all right, I'm rambling a bit. Going back to the knowing who you are as a brand, it is important, and it is a blessing and a curse, because you have to know there are certain parameters. Even when I'm a dancer, I mean, being a dancer, I know that you are acting because you are on stage. You're portraying a certain image on stage. But at the same time, I still have to be cognizant of, you know, pictures that are taken. It may look like if I'm in a compromising position, but it really was not, you know, because at the end of the day, some of my customers may not know that I am a dancer, or some of my customers may not understand that that was the situation, you know? So you still have to be very clear. And I mean, it doesn't even matter for if you're an entrepreneur. That's just in general, period. I mean, for
good
life.
Point. Yeah, that's a good
point. It is, you know,
you
still have to be cognizant of certain the way you interact, like the way you are perceived in public, because at the end of the day, you socialize with other persons. It's not just you.
Yeah. Risha, you want to just comment on that one as well? Any comments?
Just to say that I'm aware that when you look at your personal brand is what people say about you when you're not in the room. Mm-hmm. So you have to control over what they say by how you conduct yourself.
Yeah.
So and there's certain aspects of your life. Rachel, the professional person, is not Rachel, the auntie, or the one of the girls that go party and stuff like that. But like Cece says, it's all interconnected, and you don't want one to tarnish the other or compromise the other.
I remember as I say, I dabbled a bit in another enterprise. Some of you may know about, but. I remember asking someone who's involved in branding about it. I said, do I attach my name to this in any way? And they said it can go both ways. On the one hand, if you start an entrepreneurial exploit and it works really well, that's great. What about if you start it and it doesn't work well? does that negative performance then affect another one you're going to, that somebody might say, oh, he was in this or she was in this, it didn't work out, hey, she's doing something else.
That's
You know,
the
is that a
beauty.
concern?
That's the beauty of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
take risks.
Yeah. Well, there you
take
go.
risks.
Touche.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Touche.
Yeah.
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 We have another question in the chat here, and it's a creative person. Obviously, they're asking any ideas on starting an art business. Janae, you are the closest to an art business among the three of you, I think,
Yeah.
sort of.
Yeah.
So, you have any perspective on that?
Art is a very personal thing. I would say it's a very personal thing, and you as an artist need to know, okay, which medium do I want to go into, which one, and then obviously look at your industry and think, okay, is this something that's going to make sense? Because art is very tricky, and as a creative it can get tricky because you may think that your art is beautiful and your father may think that is beautiful, but it's not going to sell because nobody wants it, right? So you have to, it's difficult because you have to find the balance. You have to find what works and then also what works for your market as well. And you kind of have to mesh the two together. So you definitely have to see, okay, yes, I know that I can paint, but how many people are going to want a painting? Who is going to want a painting? Or if you want to enter into a mass market, if you're an artist and you paint, you know, I can probably, and I could give you some tips. You could make paintings, put them on canvas. You could print them on t-shirts. You can enter into graphics. Like there's so many ways that you can pivot it so that it benefits you as the artist. Yeah.
And art is such a subjective thing as well, right?
Yes, it is.
That's the other thing.
So,
you know?
so it like it honestly is to find that balance between knowing what people would want to buy, because at the end of the day, it's a sell.
Yes,
You need to find
yes, it is a business. Yes,
it is a business. You need to sell. So it's to find that balance between what's actually going to sell and what is authentically you as an artist.
I want to add to that because this is where partnership comes into play too. You might not be known, but you mentioned t-shirts. There might be a designer who's known for their clothing that you collaborate with, and then your artwork can be showcased on their work. Or if you're a photographer and again a painter, and there's somebody who sells fantastic cushions, and so they want to do a special edition of something, and they collaborate with you, and then there's your signature on their product that is guaranteed to sell, and you are now exposed. So looking into partnerships, there is a perfect example of how that could work too.
Yeah, you're quite right. The collaboration is important. And when I made the point, I wasn't trying to say that Caribbean people don't. I was trying to say that people always say that Caribbean people don't like
It's
to
true.
collaborate.
It's true.
But I think there's a lot of collaboration going on. I mean, you see it in the music scene all the time. Carolyn, you have any perspective on the idea about art? I don't know if you have any other experiences around art, maybe that we don't know about.
You see my art, Christian. Okay.
Yes.
I felt a little attacked. That's why I was very quiet.
Yes, because I saw that giraffe. I saw that zebra. Sorry, not giraffe.
You couldn't even tell what it was. So clearly, I'm not selling it. No.
No. I'm just kidding.
No. So I agree. Like I have never said I was an artist. Art has always been a passion of mine. A secret passion that, quite honestly, it's only this week I actually posted it on IG and people were like, "Oh my goodness, did you?" And it's always been a passion of mine. It was never a business. And I think creative people are going to create regardless if they're getting paid or not. So I'm a little, I differ a little from my colleagues, whereas I mean, you have to eat, but at the end of the day, you have to feed your art, right? Like you have to create. And yes, the almighty dollar being what it is, but when it comes to art, and I know there are all different kinds of art. I mean, Janae is an artist with her jewelry. That's an art form. But when it comes to, like, you know, me and my sketches and other people and their paintings, I firmly believe that you have to do it. Like, you just have to do it. Like, you saw me, Christian. I'm up at like 1 a.m. and I'm just there at the table sketching because it's what I have to do. I'm not looking to make $1. But at the end of the day, I really think that, you know, if it is that you want to be a professional artist, and that word professional leads to being able to sell your artwork, then you look at, displays. And we all can think of the artists, young men who have created their brand and they've worked together. And you talk about people not collaborating, they have collaborated, they've developed a brand. They have developed a brand that people want. It's sexy, it's creative, it is a must-have. They work together, you know who they are, you know their pieces when you see it. And I'm sure they didn't necessarily start it with the idea. They started with, hey, I have all these friends who are amazing artists. You know what we should do? We should show everyone that we're amazing artists. Yeah. And then the other stuff follows. So sometimes maybe it is, I'm of the belief that you just do it. Just do it. Just do it for the love sometimes. Like honestly, it sounds really hypocritical of what I said before, but sometimes the artist in me says just do it.
Yeah. So there's another question from our Facebook viewers, and it's an individual question for each of you. Put you on a bit on the spot, actually. How are you all pivoting your own ideas post-COVID and future plans? Obviously, this COVID has made us do things a lot differently. Certainly, we're having a lot more webinars, and a lot of people are having these conversations, taking the time to do it using technology, which frankly is something that we should have been doing a lot more anyway. So that we know that that's one of the legacies of COVID, a lot more webinars. But individually, each of you, and maybe we can start with Janae, what are your plans in terms of, without giving too much strategy away here at this point, what have you given a thought to pivoting post-COVID or just back to normal? What you did before the lockdown, or any plans to pivot in any way?
I wouldn't necessarily say pivot because I had these plans before. It's just kind of pushing me to get there faster. But definitely I've been affected because obviously although jewelry is gift giving, so there's that, jewelry isn't a product that you need in your life, right? It's not essential. And with events not happening, and people not able to express themselves like they should, or like they want to, or they're accustomed to, I should say, it definitely has taken a toll on my business. However, I'm eliminating negativity from that. I've gone past that phase of this period. So I'm just focusing on what I really needed to do, which is obviously going digital, and also, just finding ways to make it work without letting the cat out of the bag.
All right, there you go. Yeah, that's good. All right, Rachelle, you want to comment on that question as well in terms of post-COVID?
Well, I think
difference to pivoting, any changes?
Well, COVID has done a lot for me as far as my personal outlook especially with branding. Like CC mentioned, people in the industry don't usually apply the same amount of effort to themselves that they do to their clients. And I found that there were so many things I've always wanted to do, create my original content, that kind of stuff that I put on the back burner for clients. And also sometimes even being afraid to be seen. I'm behind the scenes type of person. And so with COVID-19, what it did is that I had an idea, and because there was no time, believe it or not, to try to make it perfect, because I didn't have the access to go outside and bring in 2 cameramen and all that kind of stuff. But I had the idea that I wanted to continue to talk to people. I wanted to share their stories. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start a show. Something I always wanted to do. I'm going to start
quite good. I saw it, yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and I'm the sort of person that I want to be able to shoot in 4K, want my audio to be on point. And the COVID-19 forced me in a position to do things, to just do it, like CC just mentioned, with a computer camera and a headphone, and now I have a show. And what it did indirectly is also worked on my brand and kept me relevant in online. People may know about Mirrors Media now. People may know about me, but most importantly too, I'm learning from other people. I'm getting to understand their stories, and it's helped me sharpen my journalism senses, all that kind of stuff. So what I plan to do is take this momentum with me after and throughout and apply it to my business, apply it to continuing to create original content, and realizing that when you just decide that you're going to do something and you just make it happen and don't always think it has to be perfect, then you realize there's so much more you can do if you just let go of fear. And it's so funny that a pandemic had to pull that out of me. So that is what I will apply to from my business moving forward and me as a person.
Okay, thank you for that. Cece, you have any comments on that? What it relates
I
to?
feel like I'm just saying all the wrong things this evening.
Okay. I don't know why you would say so.
I am chilling. No,
I feel you, girl. I feel you.
I get sleep too. I'm getting sleep.
no, I'm the kind of person normally I have several projects on the go at the same time. So I am on air, I'm leaving on air because I have a meeting, or I'm coming from a meeting, I have a cocktail party, I have events. I'm always on the go. So I think the first week I literally did not change out of pajamas for the first week. So I was just chilling. I was just like, yeah, okay, I had all these ideas and I'm like, tomorrow. I feel like I'm just not giving the right. No, but honestly, at the end of the day, my plans are, and like I said, I've been fortunate enough, and this is where the 15 years of putting in my dues and paying my dues is coming to play, because I'm now getting calls. So as opposed to me now thinking about things, I'm now getting calls to be part of projects. I'm now able to pick and choose. Today was the first day of online classes. Don't ask me what's in my coffee cup, but I'm just saying today was the first day of online classes, and I'm able to do that. And I can now say, well, it can't be before 12 because I'm doing school.
Right.
And I can do that. And I appreciate that because I know it's not going to last. And going back to the art thing, art is something that I've always been passionate about, but I've never had the time. So art is not necessarily my long-term plan. It's not necessarily something I'm going to turn into a business. But I've always loved it. And now I actually get to do it. Now I actually get to do my sketches. Now I actually get to show people who are maybe interested that this is something that I'm passionate about. Moving forward, I think it changes things because, my business was very heavy. Me as Cece, as Cece was very event heavy based. There are no events, like Janae would mention, there are no events. What does that mean? Are we doing more online events? That's another thing. Mm-hmm. And like Rochelle said, I've never wanted to be in front of the camera. So now I get the opportunity to be behind and create from the back. But why don't you do this? I don't necessarily need to do that anymore. I don't need to be on stage. I don't need to be in front of the camera. I actually don't mind doing paperwork so I can, homeschool my son. So it's flipped a little bit. I think people have energy and they want to do things. And like I said, with art or whatever the case is, if you don't, unfortunately, it's an unfortunate situation if you're not working, but it also gives you a chance to do your passion projects. And whether that turns into a business or not, you have an opportunity to do that.
Okay, Maya, look at the time. I can't believe how an hour has flown by. But we have a final question here from Facebook. So we take that very quickly. How will you all protect your new brand ideas, intellectual property? Is that something that you focus heavily on? We have about 2 minutes before we wrap up the webinar, so if you just take it very briefly. How will you all protect your new brand ideas? So intellectual property, is that something that's extremely important to you? Is that something that you think people should do as it relates to protecting the ideas?
If you can, yes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't direct which one. Yeah, just jump in.
For sure, register. So
Okay.
Register your brand, register your name, get your business going. Those are things that you can, and I think the good thing, one of the best things coming out of this is that everything's shifting online. Because why do I need to go stand in the line to right? So register stuff, own your social media handles, own your social media pages from early. Even if you don't have any content, own them and leave it blank. Coming soon. Own those things, get those things in place, and work from there. So that would be my initial off the bat stuff to do that you can do.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Rasha, you want
agree.
to?
No, I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
that's it.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're wrapping up here now. It's just 7 o'clock, and I first of all want to thank the three of you for joining the conversation this evening. Very interesting. As you can see, that the time just flew by. I think we could have kept talking for another 15, 20 minutes, but we did promise 1 hour, so we won't overindulge on your time. I really want to thank you for giving us your time and your experience and sharing with us from your perspective as an entrepreneur. I also want to thank everybody who's joined the Zoom webinar this evening, and also those who joined via Facebook. Thank you very much. Look out on our Facebook page. We're going to advertise the third series, the third segment of the series, which should be sometime later this week. I think it's going to be on either marketing your idea or financing your idea, one of the two. So thanks again very much, and pleasure to be here. My name is Christian Paul. Good evening.
Bye.
Bye.